Hey everyone, before we jump into today's episode, if you haven't already, go check out Ostrich. We're all about improving your financial literacy, financial well-being, and helping you get to where you want to be financially. And we've actually rolled out a really cool program that I'm excited to announce. It's called Shares for Shares. And we're actually giving away shares of stock in our company for sharing our network and helping grow the network. So go to getostrich.com, sign up, start sharing, and you can earn a limited number of referral shares that we've got available. Hey everyone, welcome to the Silicon Alley Podcast. I'm William Glass, CEO and co-founder of Ostrich, and of course, your host of the Silicon Alley Podcast. Now on today's episode, I have Kareen Walsh, the CEO of Revampologist. And if you're not familiar, the Silicon Alley Podcast dives deep into each and every entrepreneur that we have on the podcast and understand their mindset of what it's like to really grow and scale a business as it's happening. Now, Kareen is CEO of Revampologist, which focuses on coaching executives and from folks that work at BlackRock all the way to startups and folks that are just starting out. But she works with all types of leaders, executives, entrepreneurs that are focused on building, growing, scaling their companies, as well as developing themselves as leaders. Now, Kareen has a ton of industry experience, having been in a number of large corporate companies, tech startups, working in startups within large companies, and has done some really incredible things in her career, which you will hear all about. She also hosts her own podcast called Your Badass Journey, so go check that out as well. Now, if you have not, please subscribe and follow the Silicon Alley Podcast so you get notified each and every time we drop a new episode, which is every Friday morning, 5 a.m. Eastern, so that you have something good to listen to going into the weekend. Now, without further ado, let's get into my conversation with Kareen Walsh. You got no time to waste, but still you hesitate. Caught in a circle. Kareen, welcome to the Silicon Alley Podcast. Super excited to have you on, and really, really relevant timing to have you on too with your area of expertise. So glad that you're able to join us.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've got a pretty impressive background and done some really incredible things. So I'm super excited to dive in. But one of the things that you mentioned and have talked a lot about is remote work, which I think is really relevant right now with COVID. But before we jump into all that stuff, let's take a step back. Tell me a little bit about your story, how you ended up in startups and helping coaching not only startups, but businesses and entrepreneurs of all sizes.
Yeah, it's interesting in my, when I look back at my employment history, I'll call it, the time at which others would employ me, because I feel like now I'm a bit unemployable. I've been in this for so long. Yeah. But, out of college, obviously, in your 20s, you're in that search, what the hell do I do with my life? Yeah. And I moved from DC, I went to school in GW, and I moved to San Francisco right out of college. Didn't really know anyone. It was back in the late 90s, and it was a time for me to just explore. And so what happened was I went through a really bad work experience where I hit a glass ceiling in my first job out of college. If you can imagine, you're all in growth mode when you come out of school, and you're like, want to put all your everything into everything you're doing. Yeah. And my first job, I hustled, and I, was really making an impact, but my management team was not really into helping me grow there. And I was really stressed out. I was doing everything for my job. I didn't really have much of a life. Yeah. And it forced me to really look at, is this a place I want to grow within or not? So because it was a glass ceiling and I knew I couldn't grow there anymore, and it started to affect my health, I was like, I just resigned at 23 at the time, I think it was. What happened though, because of that circumstance, I was able to join basically a fintech company back then. It was software, obviously with discs that used to get mailed out. So I know I'm aging myself for all you stars, but I'm giving you this context because I learned software development lifecycle really early in my career, like really at the point where it was just being discovered and fine-tuned and learning the operational piece of going from design to release was a much larger cycle, but learning that operation helped me throughout my career, which is why I'm bringing that up. And the cool thing is that in this company, it was a financial software company. Yeah. I actually joined a team that was what you call a startup today, back then it was more of a subsidiary of the company. They were launching new tech services that went along with their software. And it was a data feed that would translate custodial data from all our different financial houses and translate it into using the software. So I'm giving you that kind of history only because that was the foundation of something I did not even seek out, but I landed in. So my first startup experience was something that I tripped into, I would say, but I was very, very glad to, because what ended up happening was within 5 years, I went from a business analyst helping launch that division of the company and that service, which is a whole new revenue driver for the company, learning the skills of technology, how it bridges process, and then really engaging. And I got to build out a department, people, you know, in how to actually lead in it all. And I was 23 until around 28. Where the last 2 years of my time with that company, I was in charge of mergers and acquisitions. So in the operations piece of that. So I really was gung-ho career in my 20s, and I learned a lot in that company. And I would say that experience and the caliber of people I got to work with gave me a foundation of how quickly you can move within a company when you want to, how to literally leverage all the skills you have. And I would say my dynamic takeaway from that experience was I really love merging people, process, and technology. So when I resigned from that position, because I couldn't really grow anymore, and I had such a unique career there, I also was on burnout path because of my whole life was my career. And a lot of our startup founders, I'm sure watching and listening, know what the burnout path feels like. Like, we really want things to work out and make happen. So I had to put it all on pause and start to take care of me. And that was the first time I initiated my own company. And that was really just selling my time to other people. And I would go in to different companies and help them launch projects, and mainly in technology at the time. And then I did that for about 5 years, just working for myself and contracting myself out. And that even gave me more exposure, because then I got to see how many more companies run, from large scale to small, from non-for-profit to profit. Like, I really just wanted my hands in everything to learn as much as possible, at my own control, working for myself. So that was, you know, until about mid-30s. And then I decided to join another company when I moved back here to the East Coast that time. I've also ping-ponged back and forth. So if you want anything to do with moving across the country, I've done it like 13 times. Pretty crazy. But
perfect. I know who to call.
Yeah. No, it's just really, you do know who to call. I literally should have invested in a moving company in my 20s. I did not realize how much I would move across the country. So I came back to the East Coast to marry my now husband, and I decided not to go into the competitive consulting landscape here on the East Coast, and really wanted to establish myself here working with other companies again. So I went back to corporate, but they were all startup environments. Like, they all had that energy of bring everything you have to the table and show us how. So the first company I joined was ask.com, and Ask at the time was, you remember Ask Jeeves?
Oh yeah.
All that. And I had worked at AOL for a contracted stint before, so I understood communication platforms and what was needed there. And so with them, I brought in all their, I introduced agile practices to them, because I had been exposed to continuous development in my consulting career, and I brought it into other companies and got trained that way. And then when I joined Ask, they hadn't gotten on the bandwagon with that yet. So that was really cool to be able to be one of the forefront of getting everyone certified in Scrum, and really showing how you can get higher quality products out the door, focus on MVP, etc. And that gave me more confidence of, again, working with other people's companies, like being an employed person. And so I decided to go do that with an actual startup as a director of their Agile PMO, and did that in an e-commerce company in Manhattan until it was sold to Groupon. So from the startup experience through that, it's really about the exposure. when I finished working with that company, I ended up becoming head of their strategic initiatives, the e-commerce firm. And then luckily, I always welcome a layoff. I know people get really scared, but I love to get paid to leave a company. I think it's the smartest way to exit any company is for them to pay you to go, because you now have investment dollars in yourself to figure out what you want to do next. That was always my approach. And a lot of people now are going through, even in your startup environments, even if your listeners are someone who are in corporate scared they might lose their job right now because of the situation we're in, welcome it, because a new opportunity is going to be on the other side. That's always been my advice.
Yeah, I like that mindset. I mean, that's a good way to think about it. I mean, you can obviously look at the negative of like, I don't have a job, but if you just got paid to leave, that's a much better situation than not. So
yeah, and it's also something where I always saw that as, okay, they're investing in me to go find something else. Like if you approach it that way too, it becomes a much more of an opening on the other side versus a scary wall that you feel you have to climb. So with that layoff, because a new C-suite came in when they were getting ready for Groupon to buy them, and I welcomed it because I realized that I did not want to be working for other people anymore, and that's when I launched the business that I'm running now. So that was back in 2012. And so I have been running my company, Revampologist, which is really a coaching company with consulting and staffing services. Because it ends up when I start coaching executive leaders or working with startups and they ask me, how do I do it? I bring in the consulting side and help show them how, and then train up their team so that they can all do it themselves.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. I love that journey. You've had experience in startup and corporate and back again and all that stuff. Yeah. I'm curious, looking back, that very first job where you hit that glass ceiling that forced you to go to a startup and find your way. Like, could you talk to me a little bit about that? Because I think that's, something that we kind of glossed over, but had a real big impact on your entire career.
100% did. I realized in that moment that I will never let the limitations of other people limit me. Like, that literally was my lesson that came out of that. So it fueled me to make sure that whatever I go into and whatever I choose to say yes to, I will always give it my all, but I will always check to make sure that the way I am standing in it is limitless. Really, like, and if I'm feeling confined, or if I'm feeling as though something I really want to achieve or see make happen is out of my control, meaning it's the system I'm within, then it's up to me to make that choice if I'm going to let that limit me or if I'm going to step into what's next. Yeah.
No, I love that. I love that. The work ethic didn't change. It was understanding if you were in a system that was going to allow you to thrive and grow, and making that decision of saying, you know what, this isn't right for me. I've got to go find something that is.
Yeah, I think, a lot of us get caught up in trying to make things fit that don't fit. And then we wonder why we're unhappy or not fulfilled by the work we're doing, or not seeing the results against all the effort. And sometimes it's either you've outgrown what you were meant to learn in that moment, or what you were meant to produce, etc. And it's time for a growth spurt. Like, it's time for something else. And if you can shape that within your own environment, awesome. Like, that's what always the muscle I flex first is, what can I do in the situation I'm in to make better? But if you're constantly hitting the wall and it's not, giving you the next layer for yourself, I always say we're our own software. And version, Kareen 2012 is completely different than Kareen 2021. And we're always going through this upgrade. And the sooner you can take control of what you truly want and how you want to manifest it in your life, then it shows up in the work you're doing.
Yeah. No, I like that. I like that thinking of you as V 2012 and V 2019, V 22. That's, or 2022. That's, or 20.
Whatever it
what
is.
year is it?
Future. I know. Yeah. Version control.
Exactly. No, that's great. What if someone's unsure, like, cause we all go through ups and downs, right? Even in the best jobs, the best careers, there's ups and downs. How do I know if I'm just in sort of a lull versus hitting a wall? Are there certain signs? Are there certain things that you pick up on, that that people should pay attention to that will help identify whether I've hit that wall or it's just a low period?
Yeah, so identifiers of where you feel like where you could be feeling stuck or you could be feeling less than in your life, right? Where you're really questioning a lot and you're not finding the answers. I have a tool that I use in my coaching practice. I call it the fulfillment factor.
Okay.
And whenever I'm working with my clients and I'm like, okay, and I'm feeling that stuckness or they're unable to define with me with the questions I'm asking of what it is that feels like is holding them back or is a distraction from them actually being able to focus on what they would love to achieve or create in their life or business next. I do this fulfillment factor exercise and it's really easy. We can give it right now. I'll explain it really quickly so that anyone
Sure.
watching or listening can take advantage.
Yeah.
And I think I have it on my website under my resources page. So I will, I'll let you know what that link is if anyone wants to download it. But basically in the fulfillment factor exercise, you literally just go and you list all the activities that you're doing, like throughout the week. Like what is it that you're spending your time on? Because
Okay.
a lot of the times we don't stop and take inventory of where we're spending our time. And time and how we spend it is actually what fills us up. Like if we're not focused and intentional about it, then we could be distracted. So let's say it comes from, or you want to assess, like, is this job right for me? Or is this company that I'm working with and leading really filling me up? Well, list all the ways you're spending your time. Because I guarantee you're spending time in areas that are lower in the fulfillment factor than the things that actually light you up. Your innate being for being, like what you really truly enjoy. So you just list out all the activities. Then you draw a column next to it. And you just score it on a 1 to 10, 10 out of 10 being the highest level of fulfillment.
Okay.
What does that activity give you from a fulfillment factor? And you just go ahead and score and be honest. You're the only one looking at it. Right? Like you're not going to get graded, but be honest. So if there are things that are below, or feel like a 1, 2, write them down because you're spending time in it. Every time you do spend your time in any of the fulfillment factors truly that are under a 7, it's taking you out of your highest frequency. Like it's taking you out of your best self and what you want to produce and what lights you up. So this becomes a great assessment tool to see, am I in or out? Then I do this additional grouping afterwards where it's go ahead and find anything that's 7 and above and highlight it or circle it or put it on its own separate list. Those are the things you want to do more of. Those are the things that you want to make sure you do more of and you do first thing in the day because it's what fills you up the most. Okay. Then anything that's under a 7, now you have a list of things to either delegate or just stop doing. Like if it's something that does not need to be done, but your time is being spent there and it's not filling you up. What happens after this exercise is that you feel completely clear on changes you can make that are completely in your control. So if a lot of the stuff under that is less than 7 in the fulfillment factor is about your job, then that's an identifier that you might not be in the right job. So what is filling you up? And then now you can lean into, okay, I want to go find this type of opportunity. And now you have a focus to start shifting.
Yeah. No, I love that. That's super helpful to have that framework. It's something that I know personally that I try to do is every night write down things that I did that day and like keep track of them over the course of time and be like, okay, like days that I had really good days, what was I doing?
Yeah.
But I think that I hadn't thought about scoring each individual activity. It's been more of like overall, was it a good day or not? I like getting down to the specifics though. I think that's super important.
Yeah. And it gives you a map. Like the reason why it's effective and it's worked in my coaching practice and anybody that I've given this tool to is they're like, oh, I had no idea that something that I've been doing constantly was actually not fulfilling at all. I felt like I had to. It was like obligatory versus, uplifting. And it just gave them this sense of, okay, I can actually control and change it so that I am feeling more fulfilled. Because it's not about achievement all the time, right? Like we all know how to do things. We all know how to produce something. Like we are taught how from the day we are born. Everybody is training us on how. But rarely are we asked why do we want it and what fills us up, you know? And when we pause and do that, it becomes so much easier. You can always figure out the how. That's the other thing I always say. You can always figure out the how, especially now with technology, but you can figure out the how in seconds. So, you know, get clear on what it is that you want and why you want it, and the how will show up. It just does.
Yeah. No, I like that. And do you ever run into, because we have all these outside influences, right? We grow up in culture and there's people that are telling us we should do X, Y, and Z, whether it's family, friends, or the people that we follow on social media. How do I block all that out? And if I'm thinking about just me and what I like, what fills me up, how do I try to like filter out all those outside influences and really get down to like my why?
Yeah, you said the right word. It's filter. Like you have to filter today and figure out what fills you up and allow those things in. And literally you have to shut off, shut down, and end the interaction with the things that bring right now, especially because we're all in, you know, as we're recording this, we're all sheltered in place, and we have to rely on technology as well as these feeds of information coming at us. And I'll tell you, like in my household, I rarely stream the news. It's never on, because to me that's noise. And I rely on key moments of checking in or a conversation with my husband, because he tends to be my like news source, because he's always paying attention, and I have zero tolerance for the noise because it's on repeat all the time. And that brings me out of my frequency. I cannot serve my clients if I'm getting inundated with that noise. Your time is so valuable. That's the other piece. So it's filtering out. And then again, in my household, we barely watch regular TV. We would stream. So we're always selecting what we want to watch. That's huge when it comes to all this digital form. When it comes to social media, I have unfollowed a lot of people lately because other people are going through their own navigation of this time.
Sure.
And you have to really decide every day with intention, how do you want to show up today? And if you set that intention, then you got to ask yourself, are the people I'm allowing into my life aligned with that intention? Are the messages I'm getting aligned with it? And that's what, you know, helps me from a self-management standpoint. But you also have to be okay with, you know, disassociating and protecting yourself. It's really important, especially now.
Yeah. So true. I'm similar in the same way. I don't want to watch the news. Like I don't need to know about, you know, certain things. Like give me the stuff that's really important. And that's, you know, I'll pay attention to that, not all the noise. So I like that approach of making sure that you filter out what's coming into your mind and your sphere.
Yeah,
so
we tend to forget, just real quick, we tend to forget that we get to choose every single day what we allow into our lives. It's a choice. Nothing is forced on you. Yes, we are now forced to shelter in place. However, we choose to stay healthy and protect ourselves. That's why we want to stay home, right? Like, it's a choice. It's a choice to say, I'm going to pick up the phone and check in on the people I love versus scrolling on social media and seeing all the hack jobs happening. Like, it's a choice. So lean into those healthy choices and you live a much healthier life, for sure.
Yeah. So true. So I want to pivot back to Revampologist. So talk to me a little bit more about the business. What all you do? It sounds like a lot. I know we got into the fulfillment exercise, but yeah, talk to me about, you know, how that came about and what Revampologist is really about.
Sure. So initially, Revampologist started with me selling my time again, but more now because I had all this executive experience building a bunch of these companies, I could come in to advise on startups, building the appropriate I call it people, process, and it's three circles, if you can imagine. People, process, and tech coming together.
Yeah.
What I realized with every single company I worked with and had exposure to, the center of it all, the overlapping side of it all is leadership. And so with Revampologist, I made sure that I always worked with senior level executives, the founders of companies, to truly help them first align who they are and the role they want to play in their business, so that we could then map out, in order to generate that against your strategy with you as a leader, who do you need? What's the right complementary expertise to yours? A lot of the times, founders, especially for startups, because it's their idea, whatever they're trying to launch, feel like they have to be the CEO, the founder CEO of that business. And I'll tell you that if you're the creator of the idea, of the product, of what you are trying to launch, being the CEO is a very entrepreneurial role. You have to love sales, you have to love money, you have to love marketing, you have to love being like the spokesperson for your product. And because I was groomed in tech, most creators in tech are not that. Like they are the engineer, they are the creator that wants to just see their product come to life. And they should stay in a product role to make that happen. But a lot of the times they're put in the CEO role, and it's really, really painful for all, because they don't have the skill set to generally lead the business part of it. So Revampologist was groomed into a coaching and training type of company based on all the experience that I've had implementing, working with C-suite leaders, making sure that they have the right facilitated conversations in order to drive a business forward. I realized that a lot of the training, development, coaching was required. So that's why it's two channels of my business. And then again, with the staffing services, allows me to bring in that expertise. Once we identify the gap, then I can bring in the right people. So because I understand the environment and the culture we're bringing.
Yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense. Do you have any examples of maybe founders that that were in that CEO role that really should have been in a technical role, and how you've worked with them, or what are some examples of just client success that you've had?
Sure. So I'm trying to think of a good one.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be that exact example, but just, something.
Yeah, I know. I'll tell you about a dynamic that I think is it's a fun one to understand, because it's a really creative company. They basically produce cooking events. And so they had a brick and mortar space. It was a couple. So here we have another dynamic where it's like partners in life, now partners in business, right? And the wife is a CEO, and the husband is the executive chef. Like, he's the one that's coming up with the cooking event ideas and how to actually build up the chef team. So you come in for these live events. So it is a startup in the sense that they literally built this from the ground up. They had to design the building space, etc. When it came to skill sets, if you can imagine, executive chefs understand how to run restaurants. They are trained in restaurant management. They have, menu design, etc. But it's different when you're doing it in an event-like space. So they call them cooking events. And also, as a partner owner of the business, the aptitude of learning the actual finances of the side of the business, how it operates, how it runs, was not really a strong suit for that particular skill set at the time. Plus, the CEO, coming from a whole different kind of business, the wife of this couple, she used to run like a gym franchise for kids. Like, it was kids programs, fitness. So her expertise coming in also was very vastly different. So when they hired me to come in and advise them on, how do we as like partners in life build this as partners in business and scale it, because I'm all about growth. Like, I call myself a growth strategist. I don't know how to turn that part off, in my mind. I'm always coming up with solutions, etc. But also for them, they wanted the skills learning. So they had the most success I've had is when I'm working with executives and founders that truly want to get to the next level and not get in the way of their business growth because of their own skill set.
Yeah.
And that's a really hard self-awareness that, part of what, they have to come to. But I'll tell you, that's the winning game, like the most success we've had. And we built their business up. I think the first year was maybe a 600K around, with the initial expenses of building it out. And then within the second year they were in business, they got to a good 1.4, I think it was. And then again, the next, and now we had to come up with solutions this year with everything being closed. We created their virtual event space. And so, as soon as I knew we had to shelter in place, I knew their business would be impacted. So I immediately sent them strategies. I'm like, you guys have to get online quick.
Yeah.
and start producing events, because people at home are going to want this. And so they have a revenue stream. It's not like the exact revenue stream they need, but they are now, because of the methods we put in place on how to be nimble and also know each other's strengths, it to me is a successful client.
No, it makes sense. It makes sense. Yeah. And you brought up everything's sort of changed now. And, even if we come out of this soon in terms of shelter in place, which will be various all across the country,
right?
Things aren't going to go back to the way they were before, not fully. So
No.
How do you think about, if you are transitioning more to this remote environment, this more virtual sort of business and services, like what is your perspective around that? And how would you advise companies, leaders on dealing with this change?
Yeah, so it's so multi-directional, right? Okay. What we all have to deal with right now. The picture that I like to put in place is, right now I think people are still leaning into hope that they will be able to come back into a space that they were used to previously.
Yeah.
And it's, like you said, completely changing, especially in major cities. Like, we're both in Manhattan, right? So all the time. So you're going to have a lens, all founders and owners and executives, leaders, anyone who's responsible for a team, it needs to figure out the structures of what's going to happen when it goes. You have to look at it from nationwide, what's happening, then look at your state level, then you have to look at your city level, and then as an organization, what are you going to do? Then as a team, what are you going to do? And as a leader, how can you show up? So that's like 6 layers of understanding, which is really overwhelming.
Yeah.
So it is so vital right now, I believe, to have consistent remote offerings, like for your team, for your clients to engage with you. You're going to need it. If you haven't figured out how to run your business remotely, this is the time to invest in that, because it will continue for years to come. This is not going to be the only pandemic we go through. This is what is defining our new normal, is the ability to be nimble and pivot as quick as you can when certain things out of our control hit us individually as well as our business. So we have a lot of more systems we have to consider now, like systems we as a business lead in. How are our clients? Where are their demands? How are they thinking? Because, most startups have to focus on the needs of their client. And right now, every single client is questioning what the hell their needs are. Right? And so you have walking alongside your clients and asking those questions and getting a better understanding so you could figure out how do you serve them during this time and get their continued business is also important as a parallel thread to getting your internal operations, services, and offerings in place. So I have my own thoughts on trends that I'm going to see happening, as well as the foundation of business structure that now needs to be considered. I'd say that I've been groomed for this because I've been in, Y2K, I had to prep for 9/11, I was in the city for that. We had the recession in 2008 that I stayed fully employed through because of the way I am solution-based and can dynamically help solve things. And now it's like the practices of how we operate. I feel like I was groomed for this time. Like I know how to help people through that. The thinking about growth in an environment like this will require some facilitated conversations to be innovative during this time. I think it's a great time for innovation. It really is, because we're in uncharted territory. So, if any of you of the startup founders watching haven't done yet like an innovation hackathon or something in their company, this is the opportunity to get creative. You don't know what's going to come out of those type of sessions, but now you've engaged your whole team on not just thinking about keeping the lights on, but thinking about how we can evolve our business to serve in an environment like this.
Yeah. No, I love that. Yeah, this is the time to innovate. I mean, as you said, just things have changed so much that it's a great time to bring something new to the table. And there's so many, as you said, people don't know what they want, don't know what they need anymore. So helping folks discover that or find that or provide solutions to those situations, I think is incredible opportunity.
And they all want to be engaged. You know, like right now people are, yes, they're sitting at home, but everybody has an innate desire to be of use, right? Like we all want to connect and be of use. We just need to be asked. Like you just have to reach out and ask. And so as much as, yes, we're certain areas have a higher, death rate or, illness than others, and there could be things happening in small pockets, from a mass population, there's still availability of a lot of ingenuity, a lot of brain trust, a lot of thought leadership that you can lean into right now.
Yeah. I love that. Well, Kareen, I want to understand, as you've moved through your career from, working in large companies, startups, with Revampologist, sort of, having your own business, what's been that experience like? What's been the best part of sort of having your own company and being able to dictate your time and that sort of thing?
The best part of it is I can choose. I finally got to a point, I guess, in my career as well as my business reputation that I can choose who to work with. And I feel like that is the biggest form of freedom that we can live in. I love the flexibility. Like I love that I'm very time efficient. Time, I believe time is money. And so how you actually manage it will be reflected in the bank. but the fact that I can literally cross the hallway from, my bedroom into my office and like keep certain time measures super tight because everything functions out of my home right now. I'm loving because I can become so much more efficient in that. It also allows me a really strong self-care practice. So that's what I actually love the most about this, the choice of how I show up in my business and the intention, and even for my team, the way I'm always making sure that we have self-care first thing in the morning as our routine. And so I don't actually engage, I try not to at least engage with any of my clients unless I absolutely have to show up at the office, for certain meetings or I'm going to do a talk, etc. I try not to before 11 a.m. I try to keep my time to me. And that is the benefit of being my own boss and running my own company, is that I can manage my schedule that way. And because if I don't serve myself first thing in the morning and take care of my health and my mind and get aligned and intentional, then I can't serve all day long. So that is also a gift, I believe, in running my own business that I can control.
No, I love that. It goes back to the fulfillment exercise that you talked about of figuring out what are the top things that fulfill you and making sure you do those first thing. So
100%.
Love
That's
that.
Right. Yeah.
What about the flip side? What is the toughest part about running your business?
I'd say right now what I've been focused on, because I've been feeling the strain of the last couple of years, is the foundational expansion of my team to handle certain operational things that I'm still running. In order for me to scale, I have to delegate. And I'd say this is the hardest part for all, anyone in an executive position or anyone running a company, because you get into the habit of the doing, like I said, we're all trained to do. And so I've been doing that inventory check on like what needs to get delegated, who do I need, what's the right skill set, what's the right service I need to hire. So I'd say that piece has probably been, I've been trying to be more methodical about it. I've definitely hired the wrong team and the wrong services at times out of more of a desperation, because the requests were so vast of my time at once that I just like had to. And I don't do that anymore because it ends up being a cost to my business, like a really high cost to running my business. So I'd say that is the challenge that I'm trying to solve for now, is really building a solid foundational team, because my coaching practice has taken off along with my consulting. And I've decided to now partner with other like-minded individuals so that we're bringing in business together, and it's not all on my shoulders too. Like that's the other shift that I'm going through as well.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Being able to, as you said, as efficient as possible, bring in other people that have that similar mindset, but can add additional resources and create even more valuable experiences for clients.
Yeah. Allow me to take a vacation too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Nothing wrong. Well, right now it's just to the other room, right? Or walk around the
staycation, I should say.
Staycation. Yeah. Well, Kareen, when you think about future and I don't know how you plan for the future, when you think about like 5-year, 10-year targets, what are your goals? What does future Kareen look like, and what drives you?
So what drives me in all that I do is helping align what people love with what they do. And it's literally the mission behind all my work. So my podcast is all about that. My coaching practice is all about that. I just use all the how-to skill set. It's like, which tool do I like pull up right now to make that happen?
Yeah.
So if I were to project, into the future, I would say I want to be less operating in my business and more of an owner role, and so that I can actually reach and impact more people. Like I can go when we're able to have large events, be on a stage and talk to 15,000 people at a time and help them transition into who they're meant to be, and give them really great tools on how to make that happen in their business and life, because it's something that that excites me, just the ripple effect. When you can figure it out for yourself and get highly aligned, then literally everything around you becomes that way as well. So I think it's like the Oprah in me will shine in the next few years. And that happens through many different modalities. But I also have a vision for an institute I'd like to develop for the age group of like 15 to 25, where it's starting to really learn entrepreneurial skills at that age. But also, and what that, to me, entrepreneurial is really about being nimble and being able to pivot. And so this institute would work with that age group, but I really want to create a program that also engages foster children of that age that are aging out of the system to start getting those skills, so that we can really help foster kids aging out. Like the systems are not equipped right now to give them what they need from a support standpoint. So as part of that program would be to assist them so they can be highly functional adults and really live the life that they are meant to, not the life that they were handed, so that they can actually be amazing at what they want to do in this world as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. What foster, is that something that, do you have a lot of experience with foster children? Is it, or just in general, a demographic that you see a need that you want to help?
It's a demographic. Well, so I personally am not a foster mom yet. I don't know if that's going to happen for us. It's something that I'm passionate about, because I see, I learned a statistic almost 2 years ago that majority of our homeless population starts from the aging out process of foster care. And it really blew my mind that was a big percentage of the feed of kids ending up on the streets, because they had no system to go to. When they're aged out of the system, there isn't much else for them to stand into and know. And at that age, it's really about mindset work with skills, right? So like if you've gone through the foster care system, which was not in your control as a child, you know, like that's the piece I see that really hits my heart. The mom in me, like the maternal side of me,
Yeah.
is really just seeing like if they just had a similar opportunity to me where I was guided or cared for and
Yeah.
nurtured, then it's a whole different trajectory story for them.
Yeah.
So when I learned that was a big impact to our homelessness situation in major cities or all throughout the US really.
Yeah.
I was like, well, all they need is skills. And so it just triggered for me. I was like, I know I have the tools and I know I have the
Yeah.
systems. I just need to build the framework and the draw in. I also feel like, you know, this is not just a foster care institute that I'm thinking about. It's
Yeah.
the integration of, you know, people of that age to come together, learn together, and grow together, you know,
Yeah.
because that's all that it's about. We all have different backgrounds. We all have our stories.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah.
it's really about providing the space for learning and something that gives them that future, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
No, I love that. I didn't know that stat either about homelessness.
It blew my mind. I wish I had the exact percentages, but it was high. It was like really saddening for me. So I was like, okay, I have to do something about it.
Yeah.
It's just, you
There it
know,
is. There's that. Yeah. There's that again. The solution going
that's
back
right.
to how do I solve the problem?
That's right.
So I want to pivot a little bit and understand a little bit. So one of the things that I do is co-founded a company that's focused on personal finance and financial well-being and helping folks just get
So
the
smart.
education that they don't get.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, especially with your entrepreneurial background,
Yeah.
how would you describe your relationship with money?
I would say it's a strong one. Like I have a strong mindset around money and finances because I saw how powerful it was to have it, and also how scary it is when it's lost. And I got that
Okay.
lesson really young in my upbringing, where my father was a CEO of his own company and then had to declare corporate bankruptcy when I was in my teens. And I also saw like the personality association with having it and not having it for adults around me, right? I'm just
Yeah.
still like a child in that circumstance, but I was an observer, right?
Yeah.
From a young age, though, even before that happened, I was always someone that would hold on to whatever I earned and only invest in where I felt there was value. So I've had that, and I don't know where I learned it, but literally my family would call me the bank because anytime they needed to break money or borrow or whatever, like they knew I would have it. I would babysit. I was always working. I've been working since I was like 13, you know?
Yeah.
So, but because I understood the value really young, that has carried into, you know, my mindset as an adult. When it came to earning for myself, I knew that earning would give me freedom, meaning I could make my own choices. I didn't have to rely on anyone else if I earned my own money, which is why my career in my 20s was so hardcore, you know, getting to six figures at like 27 and hustling with the flying back and forth between New York, San Francisco, and Denver, like all the things I sacrificed like my health for, but I knew that once I got it in the bank, I could have again that freedom. So now I believe that when you are highly aligned with who you are meant to be and really putting it out there, what you want to do with your time, the money will flow. So even in a time like this, where we are challenged and there's going to be, it's like 2-point-something million layoffs happening across the US, and that it can really mess with your mind. But if you get solid on your money mindset and have faith and the willingness to do what it takes to earn, the money will flow towards you. The faster you get aligned with your gifting, like what are you really meant here to do at this stage in your life, and then find the way to sell that so that you can earn, because a job is really just selling your skill sets to earn a check. I mean, that's what a job is when you're running your own business. And now you can literally, anybody can kick off something online these days. But if it's in alignment, then the clients come to you faster. You know, the ability to sell it is easier. The ability to earn is much more productive because you yourself are aligned with how you want to earn. So I help people all the time too, and I love that this is what you do in your business and through your podcast. because people need it. Like they need a healthy money mindset, and then the tools on how to manage it. I love knowing the numbers. You have to fall in love with your numbers. You have to. Because if you don't know your numbers, or you're scared of the numbers, or you're scared of opening your bank account, that fear is going to result in a lack of money coming your way. Like you're putting up a wall and saying, I don't want to know because I'm scared of it. Well, what if you opened up your account one day and there's $200,000 sitting there? Like, wouldn't that excite you? So start visualizing that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, there's going to be a day where I'm going to open up my bank account. I'm going to see $200,000. Like, what an amazing energy. So yeah, I think I'm fairly healthy on the money side.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it. Yeah, I love that. I mean, there's that famous management quote of what gets measured gets managed and then gets done, sort of thing. Like if you don't pay attention to the numbers, it doesn't matter. You have them whether you choose to ignore them or not. They're there and they're changing whether you are paying attention or not. So
yeah, see them as powerful. Like they empower you. The numbers empower you. Like when I see the lower numbers, I'm like, oh, okay, that means I got work to do. Like I'm like, it gets me charged up. Like there's something I got to do there,
Exactly. Yeah. I love that. So Kareen, what is the best investment you've made?
The best. I'd say when I hire the right people that like take weight off my shoulders, that is the best. Like that it feels the best. It's very freeing. So from a people standpoint, that is the best investment I think I've made over time. From a physical, I'm trying to think, in business or just in life, like what?
I leave this open to interpretation, I mean, if you want to go very strict money, that's fine. But if your best investment is something that has nothing to do with money, then that's also, I think, very telling.
Yeah. It's true, because I feel like I said, like the money flows. I'd say the proudest investment, like the investment that made me feel really proud, was when I bought my first house before I was 30. And the fact that I could just do that on my own was really freaking cool. So that was like probably a proud moment
awesome.
of where I invested my earnings as well as like managing my money,
I love that.
Put it back into where I was living was really cool.
Yeah, that's a big one. That's a big milestone.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about the flip side. I can't focus on all the good stuff.
Yeah.
What would you say is the dumbest or just sort of silliest money mistake that you've made?
Yeah. So twice now. I had two other startups, I guess you could call them, that I initiated. One on my own and then one with my husband, where we invested in building technology, like we bootstrapped. And probably with the first one, I think I invested about $55K in getting something built before even knowing that I had users for it. Like, I feel like now in hindsight, like on the other side, like, what a dumb investment. Like, why would I spend all the time and money, like, building this thing that have no users on the other side? And so, yeah, to me, like, that's probably one of I learned a lot. It was a very expensive lesson.
Yeah.
But then the second time, which is just hilarious that I did it again, but we did do more market validation the second round. Well, the difference there was we didn't account for investing in what it would take to market the sale of the product we built.
Okay.
But again, like, I realized that I am someone who loves to achieve it, like see the product, and not necessarily at that time. I'm much better now on sales and marketing than I was back then, but that was a really expensive investment.
Yeah, makes sense.
And feel a little bit foolish that the way we went about it. Yeah.
Well, you've learned, right? You applied the lessons from the first one to the second one, and it sounds like, well, they may not have panned out the way that you hoped.
Other people have to pay for the ideas now. That's the lesson learned.
There you go. Exactly. Love that. Yeah.
It's not going to be bootstrapped again.
That's great. So what would you say is the biggest challenge facing everyday Americans when it comes to finances?
I think it's really like not taking the time to identify what your true money mindset is. Like, what empowers you about money I think Americans, throughout the US, we are trained to be addicted to a paycheck and not necessarily asking ourselves, what do I what would I show up for no matter what? Even if I got paid half of what I think, it would take, or what I would earn, just because I could do it all the time. Like, I think we lack a passion associated with our earnings. The people I work with are, on the other side, it's like they earn based on their passion. So I think that more of that is needed. More of that understanding, more of that awareness, is what I feel like is the challenge people face.
Yeah. And does that start with the fulfillment factor, or where
it's
does
one way to identify it quickly, for sure. And then it's about shaping what you identify into now what do you really want. So like when you see the things that you delegate out that you know are lower, then you're asking yourself, well, what would I like to put in?
Okay.
Because now you have all this time back. So it's how do you build that up? And actually that's probably the best. Well, yeah, I would say I was thinking about one of the tools I have. I have this strategic life mastery workbook on my site that helps you identify what it is that you really want and starts to like break down your goals against it. So that, along with the fulfillment factor, can actually help anybody watching who wants to work on self first to then lead that into the business that you're running, could leverage that if they'd like.
Yeah, I love that. We'll have to link to that in the show notes for sure. So
yeah, sure.
Great. Well, this has been a lot of fun. I'm going to go ahead and give you the floor, and let you leave the audience with the last word. And please let us know how we can support, find you, contact you, and everything that you're doing.
Oh, it's been so great talking to you today. And I really appreciate sharing a piece of me with your viewers and listeners. I think I just would love to, gift anybody watching. If you guys want to grab any resources from me, it's at everything about me is KareenWalsh.com. If you put /resources, there's so much free, like downloadable workbooks, etc. Whatever you need, go ahead and do that. But if you want to also see, you feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I hang out there all the time. Right now I'm doing a leadership talk series that's really been fun to like give support to people who are trying to navigate through uncertainty. But if you want to see like more of my personal life or just like how I interact every day, that's on Instagram. And so that's at Kareen Z Walsh. And we can connect there too. I am an open book. I've written a couple books. You can grab those too, but it's something that I just love connecting, so however I can serve your community, William, I really appreciate you having me on your show.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. This has been incredibly valuable, and thank you so much for taking the time to share your insights, because it's been really, really great hearing all that you have to offer, and I think some great mindset and actual tactical advice that folks can implement. So I love it.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me.
All right. That concludes today's episode of the Silicon Alley podcast with Kareen Walsh, the CEO of Revampologist, author of 2 best-selling books, and has her own podcast called Your Badass Journey. Now, what I really loved about the conversation with Kareen that stood out to me specifically, and my takeaways, are really getting into the why. Why are you doing what you're doing? How is all out there. You can figure that out in terms of building businesses, whatever it is you want to do, but really why? Get to that why. And I think that's something that we don't ask ourselves enough. So I'm really glad that she brought that up. The other thing that stood out to me as well is she mentioned that all we have is spending our time and where we choose to spend our time, and that we get to choose every morning, every day, what we spend time on and energy on. And at the end of the day, that's what is really important. So I don't know about you, but I am going after this and going to go and fill out the fulfillment exercise and start keeping track of that stuff, because I think it's something that we as leaders, entrepreneurs, and just people need to do to take accountability and make sure that we really are aligned in terms of what makes us happy and what satisfies us. So I hope that you enjoyed today's episode of the Silicon Alley podcast. As always, I'm William Glass, CEO and co-founder of Ostrich, and of course, your host of the Silicon Alley podcast. Now, if you saw something or heard something that you really liked on today's podcast, please share it with other folks. Make sure that they get the value that you got from this episode. Thanks so much. And if you haven't already, like, subscribe, follow, And that's it for today's episode. Thanks so much for being a listener and a watcher of the Silicon Alley podcast. Have a great one. You got no time to waste, but still you hesitate.